All right, let's get right into it. Something massive is happening in the world of finance, and honestly, most people don't even see it. We are in the middle of the biggest replumbing of our financial system since, the 1980s. It's this huge migration of assets onto blockchains. It's a fundamental shift happening behind the scenes, and the scale is just staggering.
So let's start with a number you might have seen floating around: $21 billion. That's the total value of what we call real-world assets, stuff like bonds, commodities, private credit, that are currently tokenized and living on public blockchains like Ethereum. And yeah, that sounds like a lot of money, but believe me, it is just the tip of the iceberg.
Because then you have this number, $6 trillion. This is the other side of the story. This is the value of assets being moved around on Wall Street's own private permission networks. Think of it like a private intranet of value. It's operating at a scale that just completely dwarfs the public market. So what on earth is going on here?
Okay, let's break down what's actually moving. When we say assets go on-chain, we're talking about these real-world assets, or RWAs for short. These are just normal financial assets from the traditional world getting a digital makeover, represented as tokens that can live on a blockchain.
Now, if you look at what makes up that public market, one thing just jumps right out at you: that huge slice of the pie for U.S. Treasuries. You see, in a world with higher interest rates, the ability to hold a digital token that earns you a steady, safe yield from government bonds, well, that has become the undisputed killer app driving this whole institutional movement. It's as simple as that.
And this isn't all just happening in one place. Sure, Ethereum is still the king. It's the dominant settlement layer for the really high-value stuff because it's so secure. But we're seeing this multi-chain reality pop up. You've got chains like Solana carving out their own specialties, like for super high-speed transactions where banks lend to each other overnight and literally every millisecond counts.
And that brings us right back to that insane difference in scale. Let's just be crystal clear about this. While the public chains are grabbing the headlines, the real heavy lifting, the core plumbing for institutional finance, is being built out on these private networks like Canton. That's where the trillions are actually flowing.
So this is the crucial question, right? Why is this all happening now? What was the catalyst? What flipped the switch for this massive migration to start? Well, the answer is just one word: clarity. Specifically, regulatory clarity.
For years, all the big institutions, they just sat on the sidelines. It was too risky, the rules weren't clear. But then, in 2025 and 2026, boom, we got landmark legislation in the world's two biggest economies. All of a sudden, there was a clear rulebook, and compliance went from being a huge risk to a massive competitive advantage. The starting gun had been fired.
And what's really fascinating here is how differently the US and the EU went about it. In the US, the Genius Act focuses on the asset itself, the stablecoin. It's like regulating the car. Meanwhile, the EU's MiCA regulation focuses on the service providers, the exchanges, the custodians. It's like regulating the driver. Two totally different philosophies, but they're both racing toward the same finish.
And this quote just perfectly captures the geopolitical chess game being played here. The US regulation, it's not just about finance, it's about power. It's explicitly designed to reinforce the US dollar's dominance in the digital age. By forcing stablecoins to be backed by treasuries, it means that as the on-chain economy grows, so does the demand for US debt. It's a really, really smart strategic play.
So, with the rules of the game finally set, the stage is cleared for what I like to call an infrastructure war. It's this high-stakes battle between giants to build and, more importantly, control the new pipes of global finance.
And the ecosystem is this wild mix of old and new players. You've got the old guard, the incumbent, Swift, trying desperately to adapt. You've got the big bank consortiums building their own private playgrounds. You have payment giants like Visa coming at it from the consumer angle. And then you have these neutral tech players trying to be the glue that holds it all together.
Swift's strategy is actually pretty clever. They know they can't win by building their own blockchain, so they're not even trying. Instead, they're using what they already have, this massive network of 11,000 banks, to become the universal translator, the bridge that can connect all of these different digital islands together.
The Canton Network, on the other hand, which is backed by a ton of huge financial players, it solves a fundamental problem. How do you get fierce rivals to transact with each other without forcing them to show their hands? Canton's whole design is built around this idea of privacy, creating a shared space where different assets can interact without leaking any secret sauce.
And then you have Visa. They're looking at this whole thing from the last mile perspective.
They're building the tools to help your local bank issue its own stablecoin, but in a way that can plug in to public chains like Ethereum. Why? Because that's where the users are. That's where the developers are. Visa wants to be the main on-ramp for everybody else. Okay, so we've got the mind-bending scale, we've got the new rules, and we've got the titans battling it out to build the infrastructure. But so what? What does this all actually mean for the real world? What really changes when our money and our assets live on-chain?
Well, here's one of the most immediate and dramatic changes. The old way of sending money across borders is a joke. It's this ridiculously slow, expensive chain of correspondent banks that just pass your money along for days, each one taking a cut. The new way, you send a stablecoin directly. It gets there in seconds. The entire middleman chain just disappears.
And the impact here is just massive. For businesses sending money internationally, settling with stablecoins can slash transaction costs by over 80%. I mean, that's not a small improvement. That's a complete revolution for global trade.
But it gets even crazier than that. This brings us to the concept of programmable treasury. This means you're not just moving value anymore. You are programming it with rules. So imagine a payment that is locked until an IoT sensor on a shipping container confirms the goods have arrived safely at their destination. The payment just releases automatically. Things like manual invoicing, letters of credit, they could become relics of the past.
Of course, a disruption this big doesn't happen without creating some waves. Even the Federal Reserve has flagged a major risk here, what they call deposit flight. Think about it. If trillions of dollars move out of normal bank accounts and into stablecoins, that shrinks the pool of money that banks have to lend out. This is a huge structural pressure on the entire banking system, and it's forcing them to either adapt or risk becoming obsolete.
So, we end on this final thought. What we're watching isn't just a tech upgrade. The very source code of our financial system is being rewritten from the ground up. This great migration is happening, it's accelerating, and it brings us to the single most important question for the next decade. In a system that's ultimately built on code, who is going to be the one holding the keys?